Good evening. Call the meeting to order. I invite you to join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a new commissioner tonight, and Arlette has foregone having her oath here in the chambers, so she's already has full oath and is full commissioner. We'll do roll call vote, please. Roll call, please.
Gehrig?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Preston? Here. Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. Health. The Fargo Cass Public Health and Sanford Health have partnered to provide breastfeeding support group at the Family Cass Public Health Building. The Baby Cafe program provides breastfeeding mothers with support and resources. Baby Cafe sessions will be facilitated primarily by a lactation team from Sanford. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, appointments are required in order to control the class size for social distancing and can be made by visiting the classes and events section of the Sanford Health website. Library. The Library of All Ages Summer Reading Program, Imagine Your Story, continues through August 15th. The program provides opportunities for reading and chances to earn and win prizes. The Fargo History Hunt continues through August 15th and features 17 historic monuments, markers, statues, and structures throughout Fargo. Voting for the Battle of the Picture Books is in its third round. Voting is online, and the final round of title is to be announced by July 13th. We also have some increased opening of the library that is coming in July, so watch the notices. Interestingly enough, Fargo has been named the #1 city in the United States to begin a career, according to occupational resource website CPA. More than 200 cities were analyzed and ranked based on median income, average rent price, and typical unemployment rates to determine rankings. Low rental rates and high employment percentage helped Fargo secure the distinction of the top city in the comprehensive rankings. The average income in relation to cost of living also bolstered Fargo's position. Great news, a new Statue of Liberty was installed today at the Statue of Liberty Park near the Veterans Memorial Bridge. The new statue replaces the original statue that was stolen in July of 2019. After numerous searches did not find the missing statue, a replacement was commissioned by the City of Fargo and paid fully by the donation of private funds. Lady Liberty is one of those unifying aspects of the community that is really appreciated, and its symbolism is so critical. It's a vivid reminder of the liberties and freedoms enjoyed by citizens of the United States, and to have her back in time for our nation's birthday on July 4th makes it even more special and appropriate. Commissioner Pipcorn is going to have a 4th of July's fireworks display at his cabin that we won't be able to enjoy, but thinking about Statue of Liberty. Now let's switch to a video produced by communication teams about Lady Liberty. Really excited we got the Statue of Liberty back. She weighs about 650 pounds, about 8 feet tall, 100% donated for her. I think for our community, this is kind of one of our hidden parks, and Lady Liberty is really good now with the flood wall that we have and the roundabout here as you exit Fargo. She'll be greeting you as you go past her, so as you drive out the city, you're going to be able to see her as the last thing you remember as you leave Fargo. Atlas Bronze Casting of Utah are the artists that put this up. And it's an interesting process. They were explaining to me how they did it. It's not all solid bronze. It's a bronze statue, but it's a layer bronze. So it's interesting how it's all put together. I think it's an awesome piece of art to have in our community, and to replace our old statue, I think this is fantastic. It was really well thought out. The artist did an excellent job. It'll be harder to get off that statue now. It's glued quite tightly. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So move.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the June 15th, 2020 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 18?
I so move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. We move on to regular agenda. There's a recommendation for resolution moratorium to issue no more than 5 permits for outdoor sound amplifying equipment use. Commissioner Pipcorn to explain. We have gotten some emails on this date, so.
And Steve can also join, but I'll just give you just kind of a quick update. Basically, we did some assistance to help the bars with food delivery and things like that to help them. Obviously, they were, you know, hurt with the COVID, and so this is an attempt to help the live performances kind of do the same thing. I do think we have to listen to the neighborhoods, especially at Fargo Brewing. There aren't a lot of neighborhoods residential houses in that neighborhood, and so I do suggest that. But Steve, if you have anything else to add, that's kind of my quick overview.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. At the end of May, we received a request from Jade Presents and the entertainment industry to kind of allow a little more flexibility. The ordinances, the rules only allow 1 outdoor amplified permit every 30 days. And they had a number of events that were scheduled in April, May, and June that were canceled due to the COVID. And so they reached back out to us here at the end of June, and we hadn't had any response from any of the different departments. And so this really isn't in the auditor's office. It's more like police does the permit. They do the approval of the permit, and so but police had a lot on their plate at the time, and so I kind of grabbed this, reached out to Commissioner Pepcorn, and he said that he would support it. And so with that, we put together the moratorium with the help of the attorney's office. It was kind of one of these consortium of everybody reaching together and trying to put this together. And so the request from Jade Presents was for up to 5 permits, so an increase of 4 every 30 days, and then to expire at the end of September. So I don't know if there's questions.
Chief Todd, you're walking to the podium. Do you have something to comment?
I just didn't, I'm just here for questions too. They do come through the police department, and usually there's a 30-day prior notice on the applications that's required for the permit. They're not in residential zoning districts, and then there's the time limits where Sunday through Thursday is at 10 p.m. and then Friday and Saturday is 11 p.m.
Very good. Mr. Gehrig.
Where did the 1 every 30 days come from? Who chose that?
That was city ordinance that was passed here.
Is there background? When was it passed? What was the discussion like? There's not much in the package here to discuss where it kind of came from.
When the noise ordinance was originally created?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't have that information.
So if there's a block party on 52nd Avenue South and they have a live band, you're not allowed to, with the current ordinance, you're not allowed to have a block party on 32nd Avenue North for 30 days?
Well, if it's a residential area and it's an amplified noise situation, then no, you're not supposed to do that.
Okay. Well, I fully support loosening that up. It seems very restrictive to have only 1 in the city every 30 days. Like I said, 52nd Avenue South versus 32nd Avenue North, we're a pretty long, bigger city now, and I think that we're very restrictive with 1 every 30 days. So I fully support loosening it up, and I would fully support after the fact, if it does go well and we haven't had complaints and there's not big issues, that we make it a permanent change, or even change it further to allow for more events.
And I don't think it's just 1 in the city. I think it's per application.
Okay,
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Mr.
Preston.
Chairman, so the 5, are they per permit holder or, okay, so you had indicated that this particular one is not close to residential, but certainly there are permit holders downtown that have done outdoor kind of concerts. I had somebody express some concern about some additional permits being issued for the downtown area.
So the downtown mixed-use zoning district is not considered residential.
Right.
And so right now, under the ordinance as it is written, each applicant can have one event per 30 days.
Right.
If it's approved.
And now you're asking for that to go up to 5.
Yes.
That was the request from Jade Presents. Yep.
Just from him?
Well,
Just from Jade, or is this open to everybody? Maybe that's the question.
This would be open to everybody
Yeah.
if you do a moratorium.
Yeah.
Correct.
So basically, the Empire could have an outdoor concert 5 times in a month, right?
That is correct. If they submitted applications and those applications were approved, they could have up to 5 for every 30-day period.
And I'm just pointing out, it's close to residential. It's in the middle of residential. So, yeah.
But it's not considered residential by ordinance right now because it's downtown.
Downtown is not considered residentially zoned. It's a mixed-use zoning district is the way it's
But they have to be closed down by 10? Is that what you're saying?
Sunday through Thursday, they have to be done at 10, and Friday and Saturday at 11 o'clock.
So just to be clear, if Jade wanted to do 5 events, he could apply for 5? He could do one event 5 times, or he could do 5 different events?
Either way, if he had one band that he wanted to feature 5 times in a month, he could do that, or he could do 5 different events.
And then let's just carry it to the extreme. Let's say down on Broadway, you have a bunch of different bars and every one of them has an event. Do the police take that into account? If like Dempsey's is having something, then a bar next to that wouldn't have something, or how do you guys decide that?
Well, that's a good question, because then you might be treating different places disparately. If you give one the opportunity and the next one has the same type of parameters on their event, you almost have to give them an opportunity also.
Any other discussion? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. I see Jade's in the audience. Would you mind coming to the podium if you would? You know, I'm really eager to hear from you because you're a really important part of our cultural community.
Thank you.
And your role in the last 25 years is unparalleled in our community. So I'm worried. What I'm wondering is the status of your industry, how much this might help, what type of other help you see needed, because I'm just worried about culture and you know, events and concerts, and I know that there's talk about bars here, but let's focus for the moment, Jade, on your promotional business, if you could help me understand that.
Sure, thank you. Jade Nielsen with Jade Presents. I'm also a partner in Fargo Brewing, so I'm here essentially speaking on both behalves. This is Carly Bischoff, who works with me, Jade Presents, and she's initially the one that wrote the letter and made the request. It does stem from the fact that we've had a number of cancellations. Mr. Strand, to answer your question, our business is incredibly challenging as restaurants and bars sort of get back to some sort of normal activity. We're seeing that be really kind of a trickle effect for us. We're not ultimately sure if we're going to be doing any national touring artists until probably in 2021. And I don't know at this point at what point in 2021. Our hope currently, and I think with Carly's request, was the idea of us working with local and regional artists that we can get to come to the area, and specifically Fargo in this case, and do some outdoor events, just in our effort to put a good foot forward and try to do it in a very safe and respectful fashion. So the request of 5, for example, I think was just a ballpark. We certainly don't have any intention at this point of doing 5 outdoor events per month. We could see 2 or 3 potentially. I would be surprised if we could pull together more than that, just based on the content that's out there from a touring perspective.
Right. Often, to add to that, oftentimes we'll stumble over our feet working with national acts who are touring and trying to maintain that 30-day separation. I'm a talent buyer for Jade, and that's one of those challenges we face every season. So we're looking for some leniency on that 30-day period or calendar month.
And Carly and Jade, I'm just curious, are there any options for all age participants, or will there be potentially any all ages? That's a real, as you know, a need in our community as well. Is that fit into this mix potentially, or?
We have discussed that, you know, specifically we were talking about the Fargo Brewing site. Mm-hmm. And so certainly with, you know, regulations along those lines, we'd want to be very careful and safe again in mixing ages in that particular location. But certainly we're open and looking at other locations where we might have opportunities to do all ages events as well. That wasn't specific to this request, but certainly we'd like to get back to business as soon as possible. So it's a matter of just one step at a time.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion?
Can I just add real quick, Mr. Chair? So John, you talked about the all ages, the Block 9 Plaza. That's what's going to be going on there a lot, I believe. And I think that's going to be managed by the Park District, but I think that's kind of the intent, that they're going to have a lot more activities, and that includes all ages events a lot of the time. So I think I don't know if you're involved in that at all, Jade, but I think that's kind of the vision for the new
Correct, yeah, we've been working with them on some programming for next year that would certainly be open to all ages and family friendly and that sort of thing.
And they have an events coordinator now, John, that's doing that, working with Jade and different people setting up stuff. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. COVID-19 update, health update. Desi Fleming to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to give you a little bit of update on our numbers. So we're at, in Cass County, 2,233 cases thus far, 66 deaths. Our numbers have kind of leveled off a little bit, although across the state they're increasing a little bit. We did finish up our last round of mass testing at the Fargo Dome this past week. We had 806, I believe, the one day and 1,130 the next. So we still continue to have quite low positivity rates at those type of events, kind of under 2%. So we're not finding a huge amount of positives at those events. We will go back to our targeted testing strategy as we have identified with our task force that will have the 3 static sites, the family healthcare site, and then a mobile outreach team that does testing throughout the week. We average probably around 4,000 tests a week with those venues. We will add in sites based on any epidemiology data that we find. If there's clusters of positives in certain businesses or groups, we will add those to our testing matrix. So Fargo Cass is now handling all the logistics for the testing sites. So we have somewhat taken over the police department substation, which I've promised Chief Todd he'll get back as soon as he gives me the word. But we intended to use the lobby, and we've kind of expanded a little bit more. So all the testing materials for Cass County are coming there, and then our staff, along with some National Guard support, is kind of packaging and distributing those, getting them out to the sites, and then doing kind of that inventory when they come back in to make sure that we are keeping track of what goes in and what comes back. So the task force continues to meet weekly. They did alert us this past week that the state homeless housing project that was at one of our area hotels is being stood down as of tomorrow, just because it hasn't been utilized fully. They have to, the state has been renting out an entire floor, and they just weren't using that. So we are expected to take that over locally. We have had planning meetings with the various shelters, and they have determined kind of what their internal capacity is, and then if we go beyond that, then we have to have a plan. So we are in meetings to discuss what our local approach can be for that. So more to come on that. We continue to adjust our contact tracing staff duties based on the workload. And we're also starting to work on our mass vaccination plans, knowing that we have pod plans in place, but those are not going to work for social distancing. So we will have to do some creative adjusting for our mass vaccination plans. So CDC has adjusted and updated a lot of their resources on, they've added some high-risk categories again for people who would be more susceptible to having severe illness from COVID. Also have some information about pregnant women being hospitalized more if they're infected with COVID. So good resources, so check out the CDC website if you have time. And just a general reminder, you know, obviously if we look around the country, you know, cases are going up in a lot of areas. So the reminder is yes, we can open up, but we need to do things given those confines that we know, by wearing masks in public and by doing those prevention practices of social distancing and the good hygiene practices. So that's just my public health pitch.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And Desi, the baton is being passed to Commissioner Preston to work with public health, and I'll start by saying I've really appreciated your staff and your people and your team and your leadership going, you know, in this whole process. I'm curious, if you had a magic wand and you had the authority, would you tell Fargo to implement a mask requirement as a policy?
I don't know that requiring people is the way to do it. I mean, I think people have a personal responsibility if they're in those situations where they can't social distance. So if people can be outdoors and be far enough apart, I think, you know, then you probably don't need to do that. In stores, I think it's a different thing. You know, it's kind of, you know, you're protecting someone else in case you may be asymptomatic, someone else would be protecting you. It's just smart practice at this point when you're indoors in confined spaces and there's lots of people around you. It's just an easy prevention step.
So no harm in wearing masks?
No.
Mayor, do we have the authority to have such a policy if we were to discuss it?
Eric, do we have the authority to demand masks? I don't think we're on an emergency declaration right now, so it would have to be something that the city would pass, I assume, as an ordinance.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I assume you're talking about citywide, not just employees. So yeah, I think it would have to be done by ordinance.
And it could be done for the general population?
Yeah, I guess I haven't thought about it before, but I mean, the question is just whether there's a matter of statewide concern or not. But off the top of my head, I think that if the city wanted to enact some kind of ordinance creating that requirement, particularly under an emergency situation, I think it might be enforceable. I'd want a chance to mull that over a bit.
But Eric, typically on this, Desi's been taking direction from the state health department basically on this issue, and it would have probably more strength if the governor's office and the state health department made that recommendation to the city, would it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd probably get more buy-in with that, but there again, I think it's not necessary in every situation, but I think for sure in those public shopping areas, those crowded places, I think that's just good sense.
My thinking, Mayor, is I'd be curious if the governor would be open to that, or I'd be curious if we would be what we could do if we were to embark on that discussion. In my head, we need to have this conversation at the local level. If it doesn't happen at the state level, I think we should have that conversation at the Fargo level. And hear all sides of it, but that's just where I'm at. I'm not sure where the rest of you are or not. We all know people who are at risk. We may not know they're at risk, but we all know people are at risk, and I just want us to do the best we can.
Well, the COVID Task Force, 19 Task Force could take that up as a topic, and Desi's the chair, so she can do that, and her co-chair can bring it up as well, so we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Desi. Any other questions? Public hearing. Application for Elliott Place 4 and 9 for the payment in lieu of tax exemption on a project located at 4462 30th Avenue South, which the application will use in operation of providing affordable senior living rental properties serving low-income households. It was continued from the 6/15/20 meeting. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. The reason for the continuation is we're waiting for this report from Pfm. So About the project, this is a project that will include 84 units of low-income housing for seniors. That'd be located at 4462 30th Avenue South, the corner of 45th Street and 30th Avenue South. This additional senior housing is very important to our community, as our high-rise will have to be closed in the not-too-distant future. The developer of this project is the Fargo Housing Authority. Their private sector partner with this development is a company called Blue Line Development, but it's really being driven by the Fargo Housing Redevelopment Authority. The financing for these low-income housing projects is quite difficult to put together and quite complex. Matthew Pike from the Housing Authority has been working on this along in part of Lynn Funding Plan. They have secured a series of grants and tax credits and a loan. There's low-income housing tax credits at a 9% level and also at a 4% level. And so what you see with this application is two applicants for the same project. There's two different ownership groups that will be selling the different tax credits, and so the tax exemption would go to both legal entities that would be partners in the project. In addition to the low-income housing tax credits, they'd secured money from the Housing Trust Fund, the Housing Incentive Fund, and Fargo has used its HUD block grant money, both CDBG and home, to contribute to the cost of the land and the project. This payment in lieu of taxes will go for 17 years. That's kind of the minimum with the low-income housing tax credits. They're bound to have the low rents for those 17-year periods. At the end of that 17-year period, the Housing Authority, as the lead developer and the owner of the project, this would be transferred to the Fargo Housing Authority and would continue to be used as low-income housing for as long as possible. The Pfm report that you can see, they looked at 3 different scenarios. The conclusion is at the bottom. The first, scenario 2, would be if they had to pay property taxes based on the value of the building, just like any other apartment building. That would be substantial. Their ability to get a loan for the balance of the fund would not be possible because they would simply not have sufficient money to pay off that loan. The scenario 1 is what they're requesting. That's the only scenario that works where they're able to pay off that loan in the first year and have some adequate coverage on that loan. I should note the impact on the other taxing jurisdictions is that because this land is owned by the Fargo Housing Authority, they're tax exempt and there are no property taxes paid on the land at this time. When the project is completed and as it's under construction, because they have a private sector partner, and because of the way the state assessment law works, is they will have to pay property taxes on the value of the land. And so the property taxes paid to local taxing jurisdictions will increase to approximately $14,000 a year. At the end of the 17-year period, it would revert back to the Housing Authority. There would be tax exempt at that point. However, the Housing Authority has a long pattern of making a payment in lieu of taxes, different program, but a contribution to the city for the cost of city services, similar to probably that $14,000. You can see the PFM report. The third scenario is we're going to need county support to make this work too. I've got a meeting with the county commission in a week because the county could opt out of this and jeopardize the project because they wouldn't be able to make that coverage until year 3. Matthew Pike is here from the Fargo Housing Authority. I'd like him just to address the project and maybe talk about some of the low-income housing needs for seniors in general, and he's happy to answer any questions you have on this project. Or if you have any questions for me, I can take them now.
Matt, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Good night, good evening, commissioners, and welcome, Commissioner Preston. Thank you, Jim. So normally, you know, I'm always at a loss for words, which is unusual for me when Jim finishes his presentation because he described the financial need for this particular project perfectly. He also noted that it actually does result in an increase in property taxes being paid because Fargo Housing will retain ownership and then through a lease to the entity that's been created to create this affordable housing for seniors, we will be paying the taxes on the land, and that allows us to, one, make the appropriate contribution for those city services, but also there are a number of different options that we looked at to including a transfer of the land to the developing entity. And the developing entity, we act as general partner for the developing entity as well. So, and then as Jim noted, sometime in year 16 or 17, this property will come back to Fargo Housing where we're fully committed to then keep it affordable. So I'm happy to answer the questions. We are asking that you consider the exemption considered in the application. And where it's a little confusing is it looks like there's two different applications. There's actually one building being built, but there's legal requirements because we received both 4% and 9% tax credits, as you can see from the PFM report, amounting to about $10.1 million in tax credit leverage. And then we take out a loan for about $5 million, and then there's about $6 million additional from multiple other sources, including home funds, housing incentive funds, and housing trust funds.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So Mr. Chair, if we go to page 21, if you wouldn't mind just kind of explaining how you have the different numbers of apartments, and you have the different rates, and explain how the assistance goes for the different levels of financial ability to pay. If you wouldn't mind talking about that just a little bit.
Sure, and I actually have some good news. So there's actually a simpler answer than the one that's included in that analysis, and the simpler answer is probably going to be a little easy for all of us to take a breath, is that Fargo Housing is committing 84 project-based vouchers, and the project-based vouchers require a 50% AMI, and it's area median income or lower to qualify. So although the original application and the analysis that you see allows for tenancies at 80%, 70%, 60%, 50%, all the way down to 30%, and it's actually broken up, that gives us tremendous flexibility should something go wrong. But through Fargo Housing's commitment to put in 84 project-based vouchers, we're committed at the 50% or lower of area median income. So that means this building is going to be serving very low-income folks. If something goes wrong, of course, I hope you know in my first 2 years here, and I think it's 2 years today, we're fully committed to communicating and opening those lines of communications up with city staff and all of you should any of those things change along the way. The city's representing significant investment and support for this project in many, many ways, both from the acquisition of the property, which was done in part with CDBG money, thanks to Jim and Nicole and Tia continuing to administer those programs. But we've got a long commitment here, and at 50% AMI, we're going to be hitting those marks. There is those flexibilities at various other AMIs. We're not actually at this point looking to go above, because we can't go above 50% AMI so long as we've got those project-based vouchers in the building.
So can I just ask you, so let's just go across the top line and try to keep this simple because I'm not that bright. But so there's 19, and so they're one bedrooms, but then it says 30%. So is that?
That's 30. That means that those one bedrooms are committed to folks who make 30% or less, are qualified as making 30% or less at area median income.
Okay, so they're one bedrooms, and then so those would be the lowest income people. That will be the, and so how is that evaluated then each year for the people? And what would you predict the demand is going to be for this facility? There's a lot of them that we've opened that they're full as soon as we get them. Is that what you'd say this will happen?
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if that happens. But in answer to the first question is Fargo, we're required to make sure we're doing interim checks of their income on an annual basis. We actually, Fargo Housing, under Jill Elliott's leadership and Lynn Fundingson's leadership before me, do them more frequently than that. We are committed to making sure that, and that's only to catch those people who might have an opportunity to have realized some increases in their income. If there are decreases in their income, we make those adjustments automatically regardless, because the moment somebody asks and indicates that they've realized the decrease in their income, then we're in a situation where we can make those adjustments right on the fly. But we're required to do it annually.
Just one quick comment. I mean, this is, so our tax exemptions, we obviously need to be very careful how we use them, but there could not be a better cause for the use of tax exemptions. This is a high demand thing, and this is providing for our people, and that's, to me, this is a great thing. Jim, thanks. That's the end of my comments.
I should maybe just clarify that with the voucher, that's a very important thing. So if someone makes $1,000 a month, they pay 30% of that income as rent. So it's $300, and that voucher pays the rest of the rent up to what is required by this particular project. And so I don't know what people's typical rents are in your senior housing projects, or their typical incomes, but it is serving the very low income people of the community, especially elderly, retired on fixed incomes.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this project? We close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, I'm just curious. Low-income housing tax credits are not easily gotten in a low-populated state, I understand, like North Dakota. Could you help us just understand that picture of what it takes to get these types of projects and how the competition is there and we may not always get them?
It's, yeah, you're right, it's very competitive. The state only receives enough tax credits to do probably 4 to 5 projects a year in the 40 unit range. What the Housing Authority here has gotten these 9% credits, which are quite valuable and bring in quite a bit of income, and they've blended them together with the 4% credits where they're less valuable, but they're more readily available. And so by bringing it together, we're getting 80 units done, where many other developers would have just stopped at 40 units with the 9% credit. So, you know, we'll be fortunate as a metro area if we can get 1 or 2 of these projects a year. I think one of the things we can do to improve our ability is things like we did a few years ago. We acquired this site using CDBG money, a project that you've approved not that long ago on 4th Avenue North and 7th Street, utilizing some city property that we had acquired with some HUD. So acquiring those properties and the lead time for that, it's very important. So yeah, those applications are very competitive. And one of the things they look at in the application is the city participating? So if as a city we don't provide these kind of tax incentives, don't provide help with land, we're not going to be successful in getting these tax credits.
And I might, if I can just assist Commissioner Strand, and thanks for the question, is that you're exactly right. They are allocated on a state-by-state basis based on population. The Housing Finance Agency from each state creates what's called a Qualified Allocation Plan, or QAP. Our friends at NDHFA did exactly that, and that effectively puts out the rules by which, and the scoring basis by which they will then consider the various projects that are proposed to them. What we did, and this goes back to even, I say we as Fargo Housing, but really Lynn Fundings deserves the credit that in late 2016, working with the city, there was this opportunity to purchase this vacant property. That was done with a combination of CDBG money to about $500,000, and the remainder was taken out by Fargo Housing as a commercial loan. So then the commitment that we made at that time in January of 2017 was that we would deliver affordable housing units. When I came on board, thanks to Tia and Nicole, they sort of gave me a nudge and said, hey, you're kind of on a timeline on that. And I deeply appreciate that nudge, because what it allowed me to do was dig immediately into that QAP for the year and realize that there was an opportunity for us to do something immediately and deliver on that commitment we made to the city to put affordable housing units there. And then I just wanted to tie it to the overall master plan and housing studies that this city had done, and in communication with staff, to specifically target seniors, because that seemed to be the growing population that was most in need. So, and that was the kind of partnership I wanted to demonstrate with all of you.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Strand.
If I might continue, Mayor, and you know, 84 units and more than one person per unit, this is almost bigger than my hometown. And it's bigger than a lot of little towns out there, just this development. You know, I'm curious from either of you, how big of a wave of senior citizens do we have coming at us to be prepared for, so that this is the best community to live and retire in your senior years? It's a tsunami, I'm guessing.
I mean, we had done a housing study in 2015, and I think we need to update that, but you're right, the growth of people aged 65 and years and older is going to grow tremendously. As far as how many of them are going to need this type of low-income housing, how many people do you have on your waiting list now, you know, for senior housing?
So yeah, thanks, Jim. So our waiting list is a couple of thousand people long. How many are actually seniors? I'm happy to do that dive for you. Our concern here was that, as much as Commissioner, you nailed it in terms of the need for all seniors, I had two other concerns that I know all of you shared. One was, it wasn't just about getting seniors to come here, it was about keeping seniors here. And the second thing, it was about keeping those seniors here who otherwise, due to limited income, might not have the opportunity to stay unless there's a place that they can afford.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item B, annexation of property located in east half of Section 14, Township 140 North, Range 49 West of the 5th Principal Medium, containing 1.83 acres, more or less, all that part of the Otters, Lot 2 of east half, Section 14. On file and record as document 1490962 in the office of the County Recorder of Cass County, North Dakota. I will let Donald explain this to you. First reading of annexation ordinance, Donald Crest to explain.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, items 21B and 21C are two parts of the same idea. There's an annexation and then a plat and zone change of the annexed property. So, Mayor, just in the interests of, I know you always like to move these along, I can just run the presentations together. You'll see both motions, then you can take both motions at the end. Would you like to do that?
We do like it, Donald, when you're efficient. Thank you.
Well, I'm working on it, sir. Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Crest, the Department of Planning and Development. Your packets, I'll be doing the next two items. Your packets for these items include an annexation and a zone change ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office, a developer's agreement prepared by the City Attorney's and City Engineer's Office, and a proximity agreement prepared by the Airport Authority and reviewed by the City Attorney's Office. So a lot of paperwork to these things. So we'll go to the first one here. This is the annexation. Portion of Auditors Lot 2, as the Mayor read the detailed description. This is 40th Avenue North, or Cass County 20 to some of us, and 25th Street North. The bluish line here is the existing city limits. This property is about 1.83 acres to be annexed to the City of Fargo. These annexations are reviewed by City staff and the Planning Commission and the May 5th Planning Commission. The Commissioners found this property, the annexation of this, to be consistent with the 2007 growth plan. As you see, it is contiguous to the existing city limits. It is within our Tier 1 growth area for 2007. It's adjacent to a right-of-way here, and so this is meets all the requirements for annexation. Subject property looks like this. This is 25th Street North here. This is pavement ends, and then this will be an area that will be paved in the future. The subject property is approximately here. This is looking at it from the other side. This is looking south from the unpaved area toward the City of Fargo. Again, just what the road looks like there. And a side view from 27th Street. You see the extent of the property approximately here, so you're looking east. And then that was in March, and the same picture today, a little rainier this morning, but a little more activity here. The annexation plat depicts the area to be annexed. It's this area here. And so the Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report. It's shown on the screen. Note the recommendation includes approval of a non-protest agreement, which is an agreement between the property owner and the city regarding the future pavement of 25th Street North. So that'd be the annexation. And then if you'd like me to go to the plat and zone change, again here, same property. As you see, it's gray, so it's zoned agricultural at this time. And it is adjacent to property here that is zoned
LI, limited industrial. The proposed zoning is limited industrial, so it's consistent with the adjacent existing zoning, as well as the growth plan designation of industrial for this property. The plat depicts a one lot, one block subdivision and a dedication for 25th Street North here. So for the future development of that area. Just for reference, across the street is the airport property here. As you'll see in the motion there, also included is an airport proximity agreement. This is a standard agreement between the airport authority and the city of Fargo, and the applicant rather. It advises them of the proximity of the airport and also the city's sewage lagoons. So it's a two-part agreement there. And the applicant has also prepared an amenities plan which deals with future installation of utilities and the road paving, and that has been reviewed and signed by the city engineer. The applicant's representative, Dad Thorsness of Luxon Investments, is with us this evening and may wish to address the commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation for the plat and zone change is stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. And again, note that this recommendation includes approval of the airport proximity agreement. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
So anyone in the public wants to speak to these two items, B and C? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve both the, I guess it's the first reading, right? First reading of annexation as well as the rezoning and.
Well, yes, we put them on for first reading, but we approve them. Mr. Johnson,
you could say the suggested motion.
We take the suggested, and then they have their second reading on the consent agenda next time, ma'am.
I'll go by the suggested motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is there a second?
A second for discussion.
Any discussion? Commissioner Garrett?
So if I'm tracking this right, the property owner requested to be annexed.
Yes, sir.
And they're aware that we're probably going to improve that road, put a sidewalk in and put lights in. And
that's what the agreements are all related to.
And there ought to be special assessed for that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Don. 22, State Water Commission requests cost reimbursement FM diversion flood project costs A and B. And is there a motion?
That's a move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. You have my recommendations, appointment, reappointments to the following boards: the Board of Appeals, Civil Service Commission, Special Assessment Commission, Library Board, Board of Adjustment, and Native American Commission, and Parking Commission. You have my recommendations. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Now, the resolution adopting rules and regulations relative to the operation agenda and conduct of city commission meetings, you should have received it in your packet. The rest of the commissioners do know it, Commissioner Preston. So it's Robert's Rules of Orders, and every now and then John corrects me, but most of the time we run pretty good according to those rules and recommendations. So whenever a new commissioner comes on, we have to vote it in again. You have my recommendation. Is there a motion? Did you want to speak to it, Kimber? Nope. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Did anything change? I read through it, but I couldn't spot any red lines or anything like that.
There's been no changes since the last commission took seat.
And was it a 5-0 last time? I don't remember anyone dissenting, so I'm just making sure that there wasn't a discussion that I'm missing from last time.
No, I don't think so. Kimber Anderson.
Yeah, the only thing that's changed in probably the last 8 years was the when you bring something back to the commission. That was changed probably 4 years ago. But this last time, no, there wasn't any changes.
This is the best recollection. It was a 5-0 vote last time.
I believe so,
okay.
Yes.
Mayor, I believe we may have modified, maybe Eric, Nancy, we modified perhaps the the ability to reconsider within 28 days. That was the one that had been changed?
Yes, correct.
So what we did is we went more directly to Robert's rules rather than our own policies, which contradicted Robert's.
Right.
For the ability to reconsider something.
Yep. So Commissioner Gary's question is if you voted positive or negative on an item, because you could bring it back to the commission, and then how many days you had. And we went back to Robert's rules of orders. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. You have my recommendations for commission liaison assignments. A couple of things noted in the packet is the health department was listed under 2 commissioners. It's actually under Commissioner Preston. The other department that Commissioner Strand would like moved is the Cass Clay Food Commission over to Commissioner Preston's committee assignments. Other than that, it's as published in the agenda items. And I would move, I would ask for a motion to approve.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Strand.
The question, Mayor Mahoney, I don't know that I'm seeing diversion authority, land management, and outreach. Are those still to be named?
You're assigned that some of them is by the DA authority, John.
Okay.
You're moving into Commissioner Grenberg's position.
Okay.
And then those assignments would be through the DA.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Any other business?
Happy belated birthday to you, Mayor, yesterday.
Thank you very much.
And I know our new commissioners is 2 weeks and a day away. I'll stretch it and give you 2 meetings worth of birthday wishes, both of you.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.